Hey, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Happy Thursday to you. It's your boy Sean Wilson, sales manager, New American Funding. I'm your host today for another episode of Real From Dream to Reality. From Dream to Reality, live. Thank you so much for tuning in. We had a bit of technical difficulties earlier. Internet connection to the branch. I'm not sure what's going on. This information needs to get out. Not sure if there's little gremlins behind the scene trying to disrupt, but we're going to go ahead and bring you what we prepared for you today. And so, we've been talking about the 4 C's of lending. We started last month with that. We gave a little bit of overview of who New American Funding is, what our initiatives are in the community, and what that means. Some demographic information, and I'll repost that so that you can go and check that out as well. Today, we're going to get into credit. But before we do that, we're going to do a little bit of a review to go over some of the content that we went over last month. Our goal here really is just to kind of make sure that you have what you need to make an educated decision. And so the theme for this quarter, January, February, and March, as you see on the screen, home ownership readiness, I have no idea. So we're kind of targeting this information for first-time home buyers who don't have a clear understanding of where to start, where to go, and that kind of thing. And so we're going to bring you information that will help you make those decisions and have educated conversations with the people that are important to you in your life. And so we're going to get started. We've got some free resources now. If you have not registered in advance, if you didn't go to this website and register in advance, we have no idea where to send the information. But I want you to go to my Facebook page, look me up, or Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram at From Dream to Reality Live, and you want to send me a message, send me your information, your name, your phone number, your email, so that I know where this information is going and make sure. And we'll talk about some of the tools that we have available. I think it's about 15 of them that we have available that we're going to be talking about. Not only this quarter, some of that is going to take place in next quarter, and then third quarter we have some information coming to you as well. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Let me take that off the screen. So this is my letter to you, dear first-time homebuyer. We want you to have this information. We're talking to you about the 4 C's of lending. And so in the home buying process, there's or the or after you have purchased, I should say, and you own your home, there's some responsibilities that are inherent to that, and you want to count the costs up front so that you can prepare yourself to take on that responsibility of being a homeowner. And so on the screen is our mission, simply to share information that provokes thought and conversation about what it takes to achieve and successfully maintain home ownership, thereby empowering home buyers to take action consistent with turning their home buying dream into a successful home ownership reality. That's our goal. Spark thought, have the conversation, and prepare yourself. Who am I? My name is Sean Wilson. I'm the sales manager at New American Funding. My branch is located in Waldorf, Maryland. Um, and I've been doing this since 2007. So just a little over 14 years. It'll be 15 years this coming September. And over the years, there's some themes that have been consistent throughout my tenure in the mortgage industry. And I'm seeking to change some of that. I'm seeking to making sure that the consumer is empowered to go through the home ownership process, the home buying process with information and education so that you can make the educated decision. So there's some fun facts about me. I'm a homeschooling father. My wife and I, we have 5 children, and we chose to homeschool them. We wanted to impart who we are into them, and then launch them properly so that they can then be contributing adults to society. So we chose to take on that education piece. I'm also a musician. I've been doing it since I was 9 years old. I'm not gonna tell you how old I am yet, but over 40 years. Let's put it like that. I've been playing percussions over 40 years, and I serve at my church as well in that capacity and other capacities. And I love performance tuning automobiles. I've been doing it since I was 19 years old, just taking that wrench and getting under there and making it better, customizing, if you will, the vehicle for my taste. So I get the raw canvas from the dealership or the private owner, and then I do what I want with it so it suits my needs. And so I love doing that. That's a fun fact about me. And so when we talk about stewardship, we're talking about really taking care of or managing something like your property or object, things like that. And so part of that responsibility of home ownership is preparing in advance. And so what we're encouraging you to do is to begin thinking about the different systems of the home, right? And you want to be mindful that while you're buying a new construction and it's shiny and brand new, or you're buying a home that's in great shape, you get a home inspection and you find out it's in great shape. But if you're going to keep it for any length of time, some of these things are going to need to be repaired or replaced. And so I want you to take note of these now, and I'm going to show you shortly on the different categories and some suggestions on where you can go to get make your Rolodex, if you will. All right, and so just to make sure we're on the same page about counting the cost, right? So if someone counts the cost, what they're doing is they're considering the consequences, good or bad, in advance and how it affects them. How is it going to affect you if your refrigerator goes up that was in nice and shiny when you got it, and all of a sudden you come home and it goes up? What are you going to do? What are you going to do if your heating system in the middle of summer it goes up? What are you going to do? What are you going to do if your sump pump goes up and your basement is flooded? What I'm saying, my encouragement is to think about these things in advance and then take action on putting together what I call build your professional Rolodex, right? This is a review from last month. Um, build your professional Rolodex. You want to know who your insurance and warranty companies are, roofers, your structural and foundation companies, electricians, heating and cooling, flooring, windows, and siding. You want to take care of all of that. Plumbers, who's the plumber? Who's going to unstop or fix or replace piping, right? Well and septic. If you're living in an area where you have a well and septic system, you want to know how to take care of that and who to call if you need to have it repaired. Landscape and pavement. You know those winters here in the DMV can crack up from cement. I know that you've seen that before. Pavement and driveways crack all the time. That heating and cooling and deterioration from rain eventually will crack the best of driveways, if you will. So we want to make sure that we do that. Pest control. We want the pests on the outside of the house, not the inside of the house. And so here's some um, ways that you can reach out to people that you know and start building your Rolodex. You want to get some names, some numbers, some recommendations. So what we're saying is, let's talk to friends, family, people that are close to you at work. We can also reach out to and check out the Meetup app. Now, we don't endorse this particular platform, but I found this platform to be very helpful, especially if you reach out to the real estate investment community here. Real estate investors, they use these professionals in the course of their work. And so there, as you decide, you may not decide, but if you go to any of these clubs, you can have conversations and you'll begin to hear a common theme of a person's name or company coming up. That'll kind of give you an idea that this person is doing something right, and because a lot of people are using them. That's a resource that you can check out if you so desire. Local real estate investment groups as well locally. Angie's List is a source. And then finally, you want to talk to your real estate professional. That's their profession. They're in the space of real estate sales, and connecting homeowners to the dream home. And in that capacity, they come across contractors in some of these categories, and your real estate agent can be an awesome resource for you. All right. And so, no matter where you get that resource from, you want to confirm licensing, bonding, insurance, and references. You want to check them out for yourself. It's always great to get a connection from a family member or a friend or coworker or even your real estate agent. But you want to do due diligence yourself because it's you that's writing the check, not the person that gave you the name. So I'm encouraging you to protect yourself even further. Right? Awesome. So here's where we're getting into thinking like a lender. Why should you do that, right? I got enough to think about, but in the space when you're trying to um, obtain a loan, it would help to understand how we think, how we look at your scenario that you bring to us, right? And so I'm encouraging you to do that. Will help you understand how lenders determine your credit worthiness, and we'll talk about that in a second. It will help you understand that credit worthiness describes the state or condition of your overall credit. So that's defining it right now. So we want to know what is the overall condition of your credit, and it's not just credit. When we're talking about credit worthiness, it's the credit and the income and the certain demographics that you bring to the table, like your work history, your employment, your residential, where you've been living, that kind of thing. And so those different components are kind of spread out through the four C's of lending. And so we talked about capacity last week. We'll get into that in a little bit. We talked about capital last week. We'll get into credit today, and we'll talk about collateral next month. All right. All right. So when you're talking about capacity, what we're saying is, do you currently, in your current financial state, do you currently have the capacity to add new debt or new payment to what you already are paying? Is there room for a mortgage payment? And sometimes people will think, well, I'm paying rent. I'm paying $2,000 a month in rent. I should be able to afford a $2,000 a month mortgage payment. Maybe. It sounds like you should be able to because you've been paying that. But there are other aspects of that process that comes into play, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So just remember DTI. Just remember that. All right. So what we want to see is your most recent 2 years income history in the form of your federal tax returns, your W-2s or 1099s, and your current 30 days pay stub. The combination of these kind of gives us a historical picture of your income and what you're doing currently. That's important information that gives us an idea. Okay, so now we have a history of earning income. It seems to be stable, and so the likelihood of that to continue will be surmised from that information, right? And then it helps us to determine your qualifying income. The qualifying income, very simply, is the income that we have determined that is usable, right? So you have a history of getting it, and then there's a likelihood of that information continuing for at least the next 3 years. The source of income is also considered. Is it seasonal or is it consistent W 2 employer income? Is it temporary? Is it coming from child support? Or is it coming from alimony? Or is it coming from Section 8? All of that income is usable income, and we need to understand, is it likely to continue? And we'll get more into the approval process in second quarter, starting in April, May, and June, where that series is called Destination Home Ownership. And we break down the home buying process from start to finish there. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. All right. We determine the percentage of your qualifying gross monthly income that is needed to cover the new house expense. And here we come. We're going to talk about the debt to income ratio here. Um, and we compare that to the percentage that is established by the guide loan program that we're going for. What that basically means that FHA, Federal Housing Administration, and then on the conventional side, those loan guidelines, USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, and VA, Veterans Administration. All of these loan programs have guidelines that govern the housing expense, or we call it in the industry front end ratio. When you hear front end ratio, we're talking about your housing expense. And simply the mathematical equations, if you have your calculator out, it's very simple. All you have to do is take your gross monthly income and divide it by the estimated mortgage payment that you think you can afford, right? But now to get a good number, you can do it by your using your rent, for example. So let's say I'm taking out my phone calculator. I know I'm not on the screen right now, but let's see if I can. Let's see. Yep, I got my phone calculator out. You may want to do the same thing for you. So let's say that your rent is $1,500 a month. $1,500 a month, right? And then let's say that your gross monthly income is $4,000 a month. So you take 15 divided by $4,000, that comes up to 37.5% debt to income ratio. So when you do the mathematical equation, you want to make sure that the first number that comes up is actually a 0 point, and then the first four digits after the decimal point is the debt to income ratio. So in that example, 37.5 would be your housing ratio. So remember that $1,500 mortgage payment, 35,000, 35, excuse me, $4,000 a month in income. All right, because that's going to come up again. Okay. All right. So let's go to the next one here. All right. So your housing payment is composed of principal and interest, which is a calculation when your interest rate, um, purchase price minus the down payment equals the loan amount amortized over 30-year period at whatever interest rate is offered to you creates your principal and interest payment. All right. And then what we have to add to that is your property taxes, homeowners insurance, and private mortgage insurance or mortgage insurance premium for FHA. Those four components, PITI, make up your monthly mortgage payment. When I'm talking about that $1,500 assumes the principal, the interest, the property taxes, and homeowners insurance and mortgage insurance for for uh, for government loans, and PMI, private mortgage insurance for conventional loans, are included in that 1,500, PITI. And then also, what we also take into account if there is a HOA or homeowners association or condominium fee that is due to the community that you're buying in. That is also considered a part of your housing ratio. Although you don't pay that directly to the lender, you pay that to the entity that has imposed those fees, homeowners association or condo fee. You pay it directly to them, but it is considered as a part of your housing expense. So that $1,500 includes, for our example, the HOA and or condo fee. All right. So let's go to the next slide there. In general, housing expense should not exceed about 28% of your gross monthly income. So that's a good point. So in our example, 37.5 was the debt to income ratio, excuse me, the housing expense ratio with a $1,500 mortgage payment and a $4,000 gross monthly income. That was 37%. So based on this, that's a little high. And your lender is going to look at that number and begin to wonder if about the affordability of that loan, and they should. Although you still may get the loan, there still should be a conversation of the concern, because at the end of the day, yes, you have to make the payment, but you want to make this decision with information, not just the fact that I give you a pre-approval letter. We need to have the understanding that what does that mean? That my housing expense payment is 37% of my gross monthly income. Because that could be a concern for you later on. All right. And we'll talk about that shortly. Hopefully, this is helpful so far. Also, now we're getting into a little bit more on the debt side. So in addition to the housing expense, so put that on the side for a moment. So we got a monthly mortgage payment of 1,500. We have a gross monthly income of $4,000. Now we're looking at your credit report. You have great credit, and we're looking at your car payment if you have any, student loans, credit card payments, personal loans, child support if that shows up, and the other things that you see there. If you're paying any of these other items, right? If you're receiving it, that's great. But if you're a person that is paying child support, alimony, it's going to come up in your debt side. You have to count that. All right. Now, let's say, take this a little bit further. You got your calculator out again. All right, great. So now let's say we looked at your credit report and we determined that you have $1,000 in monthly debt payments that show up on your credit report. All right. So now what we have to do, remember 37.5 in our example is the front end or housing ratio. Now we're looking at the debt. The debt ratio, you take the same number. Now we got $1,500. You add $1,000 to that 1,500. Now we at $2,500. You take $2,500 and you divide it by your gross monthly income, and that should come up with a debt to income ratio. We're going to show it to you on the screen again. All right. So there you go. Your debt to income ratio in that example, if you take 1,500 plus 1,000, that's $2,500 divided by your gross monthly income equals 62.5% debt to income ratio. What does that mean? That means that right now we need to have a conversation about affordability because 62% exceeds the guidelines for every loan program. And now the conversation shifts on what can we do to make adjustments so that you can still buy your house. So the options are, and we're going to table, I'm not going to go into too much detail, I'm just going to give it to you now. We're going to talk more about being approved and approvability in our destination home ownership series that starts in April. Uh, the first Thursday, the third Thursday in April is when we start the home buying series. So right now, 62%, that should be, if you're a home buyer and you hear that from your lender, that should set off a red flag in your own mind because you're looking at your gross monthly income, not your net. On your side of the fence, you're looking at the net, and that 62% might be 80% on your side of the table, right? When you factor in your auto insurance, your cell phone bill, your cable bill, your food, your maintenance, daycare, those kind of things that are not considered, you consider those, and we want you to consider those. And so we need you to have that conversation with us. Wait a minute, Sean, 1,500 is too high for me because of X. Let's make adjustments. I'm glad you said that. So now we're looking at, here's our option. Are we going to pay off some debt? Are we going to lower the purchase price? Are we going to put more money down? All of these things will lower your debt to income ratio. We'll go into it more next quarter. So hopefully that's been helpful so far. Now, does your debt closet, is this your debt closet? And we're going to talk about, and this is my own Sean Wilson um, euphemism for debt and how it stacks up on your side of the fence, right? And so most people that I encounter, at really no fault of their own, because this information is not taught in school, they have a debt closet that looks like this. It's that they have a lot of expenses and debt, and they pay it as best they can. But sometimes we gotta rob Peter to pay Paul, and make sure that everybody gets their fair share, so your household system continues to run. This is dangerous. This is dangerous because there is no organization to how the debt is being and the expenses are being paid, and there is a borrowing from one area of another to another to make sure it gets done. I understand we got to do what we got to do, and most of you are doing a great job in this condition. But here's what I want to encourage you to do. I want to encourage you to clean up your debt closet. How do we do that? We want to make sure we're not overextending ourselves. That's one way to do it. Every debt that you have, every expense that you have should have its own shelf. It shouldn't be sharing resources from another expense or debt. Because when you add a mortgage into that environment, right? You add a mortgage into this environment, it's dangerous. Okay, all right, go back, go back. If you add a mortgage into this environment, it's very dangerous. It could cause some delinquency. It could cause a to get someone to get on the track of foreclosure, and we don't want that to happen. We want this to be our picture. And when we have a conversation about your debt load and your expense load, we're going to talk about things that we can help this be your debt closet picture. Hopefully that helps. All right. So debt to income ratio. Debt to income ratio, we talked about that before. The sum of all reoccurring monthly debt payments on your credit report, plus the new estimated housing payment for the new house you want to buy, divided by your gross monthly income equals your debt to income ratio. The debt to income ratio or the back end ratio or the debt ratio, that's the one that will determine, that's the primary one. The housing expense ratio will contribute as well. But the debt ratio is the one that can cause you to not be able to get the house that you're seeking. Because what it says in our example, at 62%, you can't afford the house. We have to make some adjustment. I'm leaving that on the screen on purpose because I want you to have that formula so that you yourself, Mr. Consumer, Miss Homebuyer, Mr. Homebuyer, Miss Homebuying, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuying family, so that you can then yourself go home, look at your credit report. I'm gonna give you some resources where you can pull your own credit, look at your credit report, add up the payments that show up on the credit report add up and we're going to have two columns, right? One is the industry standard, which is what I'm giving you, but the one is the real life standard, which is what you live every day. The first column you want to write down all of your debt payments that show up on your credit report. You want to also include your rent for now, or you can determine how much mortgage you think you can afford. Either use the current rent or if you think you can afford 2,000, use that. If you think you can afford 2,500, use that. All right. You want to add those up, then divide it by your gross monthly income, or if you're coming together as a family, as a couple, your combined gross monthly income. That will give you your debt number. If it exceeds 43%, there is an issue. Okay. And I'll give you the standard and then I'll give you where there is some gray area or that require compensating factors. Federal Housing Administration is 31 housing, 43 debt, right? Conventional, 28 housing, 36 debt. VA, 41%. USDA, 29 housing, 41 debt, right? All of these numbers can be exceeded if there's some compensating factors involved. Compensating factor is income. You have your income coming in, you have expectation that you're gonna get a raise of bonuses. There's history of bonuses. Or another compensating factor could be money left over in your account after closing. We call that reserve. Reserves equals 1 month reserve equals 1 month mortgage payment. But where you sit, 1 month reserve should equal 1 month mortgage payment, 1 month car payment, 1 month all of your debt that show up in your credit report and your expenses added together. That should be your standard, in my opinion, for your reserve. But on our side of the fence, it's the mortgage payment. If we're saying you need 3 months reserve, that's 3 monthly mortgage payments left over after closing. Okay. We go to the next. The DTI or debt to income ratio does not include monthly expense, household expenses such as utilities, automobile insurance, and daycare. That's where the second column comes in. You want to list all of those expenses that do not show up on your credit report as listed here. And then you want to do the same thing. You want to add to that your debt on your credit report, debt payment on your credit report, right? And then you want to um, add it to the estimated mortgage payment you think you can afford, or you can use your current rent payment as a stand-in, add those together, then divide all of that into your gross monthly income or combined gross monthly income to get your debt number, okay? Hopefully that's helpful to you, and I want you to reach out to me, um, at 443-569-6079 if you have any questions. All right, so last month we had an awesome professional, Theron Green. He's a 20-year industry veteran. He was on the show and he showed us ways that we can increase our capacity. One of those ways that he's talking about is to create spending account, right? A bill pay account, a savings account, an investment account, and disposable income account. Develop these accounts as ways that you can store your funds for specific purposes, and be intentional about creating that and growing those funds. Maybe a good idea to reach out to a financial advisor, someone that can help, or CPA, certified public accountant that can help you with these kind of things, right? All right, let's continue. Now, one of the resources that we're going to give away is this debt tool worksheet, and you want to write down all of your debt. I include you to write all of your expenses as well. You want to include interest rates, the name of the company, the monthly payment, the due date, that kind of thing. Write everything down that goes out, that you pay out as well. All right. And you want to be able to track that from month to month as well. And this will also help you to create your debt elimination plan as well. Right? That's why I want you to go ahead and register or reach out to me on Instagram at From Dream to Reality Live. Give me your name, your telephone number, and your email. Reference today's date so that I can get these tools out to you. I want to make sure that you have these in your arsenal. All right, let's continue. All right, thinking like a lender. So we just wrapped up capacity, and we talked a little bit about capital. We'll get into credit, and then we'll go ahead and go for today. All right. All right. So capital refers to the funds that you have in your checking, individual retirement account, certificate of deposit, 401k, savings, money market, mutual funds, and other investments that can be converted to cash uh, needed for closing. That's really important. So we don't consider things that can't be that's not quickly liquidatable, right? If you can call them up or send them an email or mail out to them and request your funds pretty quickly, you can convert them in a time of need or emergency pretty quickly, then that's something more than likely that we would consider, right? Acceptable sources of capital, of course, in addition to your own funds, and you can get gifts from family members, that is allowed. You can also use down payment assistance programs or grant or matching funds programs as well to help you. And we'll go in more detail about these next month. Capital also refers to cash needed to close on the property, your down payment, your closing costs, your EMD or earnest money deposit that you submit with your agent's help with your contract to the seller that shows that you are a serious buyer, right? So your EMD. Uh, we typically it's typically looked upon a little bit more favorable if in your application if you have cash reserves in the bank after closing. That's a plus. Not everybody has it. I encourage everybody to have it. And when you call me at 443-569-6079, or you reach out to me From Dream to Reality on IG, From Dream to Reality Live on IG, and give me your name, phone number, and email, we can have that conversation and map out how you can get on the road to having these reserves. All right. Cash reserves demonstrate that you have responsibly managed your money and have savings and other assessments. That right there, don't consider that as an indictment, right? Um, Life happens, things happen. We just gone through a pandemic, and a lot of people's savings have been wiped out. So that is understood. The lending community understands. We've all went through that together, and so now we're looking at replenishing some of our savings. A lot of us are rebuilding our coffers, if you will. Um, but we want to get to a place where we are managing our money in a way that is increasing, and some of that is creating more capacity for income, right? Lenders will count reserves as assets that are considered liquid and can be converted to cash quickly. All right, so another resource we're going to give you is a cash flow worksheet. We want you to be able to track your cash flow, multiple streams of income, document it, put it down, right? And then also um, use the worksheet to determine your net worth, right? List also on here, you want to list your loans that you're paying back, your auto insurance, credit cards, things like that, and go a little deeper in cell phone, cable, everything. You want to list all of your expenses on here, count interest rate, and that kind of thing. And then you want to put your income on this sheet as well. Lenders will calculate net worth, generally averaging account and saving balances over the past 3 months. Also, so now we went through capacity a little bit, talked about capital a little bit. Now we're going to get into credit. All right, so credit is coming up next. All right, credit history. Your credit, your ability to secure approval can be hindered when your credit history report contains derogatory information, late payment, collections, charge-offs, judgments, tax lien, bankruptcies, etc. Um, More severe types of credit, derogatory credit includes tax liens, bankruptcies, foreclosures, etc. All right. So now, in recent years, there's been some adjustments where certain um, tax liens and judgments are not shown on the credit report, but they are discovered during the loan process. So if you have these, you want to have that conversation with your lender about these if they exist, so they can help you navigate through it. There's ways to continue forward um, if certain measures are in place. There's a lockout period also. We call it lockout period. Basically, what that means is there's a period of time that you will not be able to get a loan if certain derogatory events occur in your life. All right, so here's a kind of a breakdown of credit. Right? So, generally speaking, credit score is divided into kind of 5 areas. So we got the poor all the way to the good, and this is kind of where the score breaks down. Um, and so just understand that New American Funding, we're not a registered or licensed credit management service provider. This information is is being provided out of our day-to-day experience and work with you as a home buyer. Okay, and I'll provide some more resources for you with this regard. Now, there's a website there. If you go to My FICO, and you can reach out to them online and be able to get this information about credit. So here's kind of the big breakdown. Your payment history is the heaviest section, right? How have you been paying your debt, your expenses? Have there been any bumps in the road that interfered with that continuity of payment? Right? On-time payments, late payments, those kind of things, they make up 35%. Um, the amount of debt that you owe. Do you have too many credit cards? Are your balances too high on the credit card? Those kind of things. Credit utilization, is that high? Right? That's 30% of your score. The length of your credit history. Do you have a lot of new debt or is it spread out? You have some new debt, you have some middle-aged debt, or you have some really old debt that you've had in a while. You've been keeping credit cards around and maintaining them. That's 15%. New credit shows that opening several credit cards in a short period of time represent a greater risk. Now, there are certain circumstances when doing this is a part of the plan, but you still want to build a history behind the new account so that we can understand that you pay on time. That's really what we want to know. Are you going to pay on time? Your credit history shows us that you have a habit of doing it or not doing it, or there's a bump in the road that has happened, a life circumstance that interfered with your ability to do it. So hopefully that's helpful. My FICO is a great resource. You go to any of the credit bureaus as well; they have great resources about credit as well. All right. So, derogatory credit, credit inquiry lifespan. So often I get the question, I have this collection, it's an old collection, or I have this old charge off. How long does it last on my credit? So we're going to figure that out. I did a little bit of research. So judgments no longer appear on the credit report, um, but they do show up in the loan process. There are reports that are pulled during the processing of your loan that will reveal if judgments exist. That's why you want to have a conversation up front with your loan officer. The last thing that you want to happen is that your lending team finds out about a judgment after you have signed a contract. You want to have that be upfront with it because there's ways that you can move forward, and you won't know that information unless you reveal that to your lending professional. Okay, collection 7 years from the date it hits your report. Charge off 7 years from the date it hits your report. Bankruptcies, generally 10 years. Hard inquiries, 2 years. But after about 6 months, they they tend to have, their impact on your score is minimal, right? And so, you wanna be mindful about shopping for credit. If you're looking at comparing different lenders, going to lenders and what relationship works best for you, that behavior will not affect your credit as much as if you're shopping. You're going to a department store to get credit. You're reaching out to a credit card company to get credit. You're going to buy a car. You're going to rent some furniture and you get credit. All of those inquiries is known as shopping for credit, and it's a big no-no when you're trying to buy a house. Tax liens also are no longer um, shown on the credit report. However, again, my caution to you, the encouragement to you is to bring this up to your lending professional. Let them know up front so they can help you plan around it and navigate around it. I recently had a home buyer who was buying a home, and she is from another country, came into this country, established her citizenship, and working, have an excellent job. She revealed to me that she had several liens in in our home state, and the general guideline is this, and I'm gonna give this to you right now, live, so you know how to navigate through this. So my guidance to her was to establish a payment arrangement with the tax entity, IRS, the state, whatever. Establish a payment arrangement. Number two, you will need to make 3 consecutive monthly payments: January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, etc. Provide a letter from the entity that documents the arrangement, as well as a payment history showing that you've made 3 monthly payments consecutively in a row, and you can buy a home. That payment is added to your debt to income ratio, and if you can still afford the house, then you can buy. The key is establishing the relationship and repaying that loan, repaying that tax lien. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful. Finally, late payment, 7 years. Now there are entities out there that will help you get these removed quicker. Buyer beware. Do your research. Reach out to me and I will give you what the law says about credit reporting. Because you want to make sure that you're operating in a way that the law is supporting your activity so that you can be successful long term with getting these things removed. All right. We got a little video here. Let's check it. Awesome. All right, so that's it. That's all we got. Now, questions. I definitely want your questions. I want you to reach out to me on IG from Dream to Reality Live. Give me your name, your phone number, and your email. I will email you these these resources that will come up on the next page. So that's 15 of them right there that we're going to give you. One is really important. We have number 11, credit report review checklist. That checklist is awesome. What it's going to do is what you want to do is have this checklist in front of you when you go pull your credit report from TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. Print it out or save it to your computer and go through it, both you and your spouse. Go through your credit reports with this checklist. It's going to help guide you to determine the information is accurate or inaccurate. Once you have identified the information that is inaccurate, you want to take action, and I can help you and help guide you through this process if you need to. Not a problem. There is a red flag checklist credit test as well. I'm giving you this red flag credit um, test so that you can quickly identify any red flags that are on your credit report that could potentially interfere with your ability to become a homeowner. At the end of the day, the goal is that you get the keys to your dream home. And what we're trying to do, we are doing here at New American Funding, is we're eliminating the barriers to home ownership. There shouldn't be any. If they are, we have a conversation to eliminate them. I'm proactively giving you these tools so that you can take control of it and not be subject to it. Education is power and information is power only when you implement that which you learn. That's when it's power, and that's when you will see the result. That's my time. Hopefully today has been awesome for you, and that you've learned something through the time that we've had here. And I want to encourage you to reach out to me, call me, no strings attached. Let's have the conversation. Let's get you in a position where you can go from dream to reality in record time. Thank you for joining.